I still remember the morning I found that eviction notice taped to my door. The crisp white paper with its official-looking seal made my stomach drop for exactly 3 seconds. Then I noticed the typo in the word premises, spelled P-R-E-M-I-S-I-S. That's when I knew my HOA president neighbor, Karen Blackwood, had finally crossed the line that would cost her everything. My name is David Morrison, and I moved to Maple Grove Estates 18 months ago. The neighborhood was everything I wanted after years of apartment living. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained lawns, and a sense of community. What the real estate agent failed to mention was that the HOA president treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom, ruling with a combination of intimidation and manufactured regulations. From day one, Karen made it clear she didn't approve of me. I maintained my property perfectly, followed every rule in the HOA handbook, and even volunteered for the neighborhood watch. But Karen had decided I didn't have the right presence for Maple Grove Estates. She actually used that word during our first interaction at the mailbox cluster, looking me up and down like I was a stain on her perfect neighborhood. I should have seen the warning signs when my moving truck pulled up. Karen materialized within minutes, clipboard in hand, designer sunglasses perched on her highlighted hair. She informed me with a saccharine sweet voice that moving trucks were only permitted between 2 and 4 p.m. on weekdays. It was Saturday at 10 a.m. When I showed her my HOA documentation that said nothing about moving restrictions, she simply smiled and said the rules had been verbally updated at the last meeting. The passive-aggressive notes started in my second week. Dear resident, please ensure your garbage bins are placed exactly 3 feet from the curb, not 3.5 feet. I measured. They were at 3 feet. Then came the complaint about my car being parked aggressively in my own driveway. I still don't know what that means. She once left a note saying my breathing was too loud when I walked past her house. By month 3, she was issuing formal citations. My grass was allegedly 1/4 inch too tall, measured apparently with some NASA-grade precision instrument she claimed to possess. My mailbox numbers weren't sufficiently reflective, even though they were the same brass numbers that came with the house. She even cited me for having curtains that were too beige and didn't complement the neighborhood aesthetic. Each citation came with a $50 fine that I contested and won every single time at the monthly HOA meetings. Those meetings were a special form of torture. Karen would sit at the head of the table in the community center, gavel in hand, acting like she was presiding over the Supreme Court. She had a little nameplate that said, President Blackwood, and would bang the gavel any time someone tried to speak out of turn. Which, according to her, was any time someone disagreed with her. The other neighbors watched with a mixture of sympathy and relief that they weren't her current target. Bob Stevenson from 2 houses down warned me that Karen had driven out 3 previous homeowners with her tactics. The Johnsons had lasted 6 months before selling at a loss. The Patels made it 8 months. Poor Mrs. Henderson, a widow in her 70s, had been so stressed by Karen's daily harassment that her daughter moved her to an assisted living facility just to escape. But I wasn't going anywhere. I'd worked too hard to buy this house, saving for a decade and rebuilding my credit after my divorce. No petty tyrant with a clipboard and a god complex was going to chase me away from my dream home. Karen escalated her tactics like a chess grandmaster of pettiness. She started timing how long I took to bring in my garbage bins after collection, once issuing a citation because I was 47 minutes past her invented deadline. She complained that my doorbell was too loud and disturbed her afternoon meditation. She even tried to fine me for the dandelions growing in the strip of grass between the sidewalk and street, which technically belonged to the city. The fake eviction notice was her masterstroke of stupidity. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, complete with an embossed seal that looked almost authentic and legal language copied from some website. It claimed I had violated numerous HOA bylaws and that the association had the right to force the sale of my property. The document gave me 10 days to vacate or face legal action and criminal trespassing charges. The sheer audacity of it took my breath away. She'd used terms like pursuant to statute and hereby decreed, as if she was some medieval lord issuing an edict. The forged county seal was surprisingly well done, probably ordered from some sketchy online company. But the typos gave it away, along with the fact that she'd signed it, President Karen Blackwood, Esquire. She wasn't a lawyer, just someone who watched too many legal dramas. Most people might have panicked. But I'd spent 15 years working in real estate law before switching careers to software development. I recognized immediately that HOA associations don't have eviction powers like this, and the forged county seal was a federal offense. Karen had no idea who she was dealing with. She'd essentially brought a water pistol to a legal gunfight. I carefully photographed the document from multiple angles, preserving the evidence. I used my old forensic photography techniques, making sure to capture the texture of the fake seal and the watermark she'd tried to add. Then I called my former colleague, Sarah Winters, who still practiced law and specialized in HOA disputes. She nearly choked on her coffee when I described the situation. Within an hour, we had a meeting scheduled, and within a week, we had filed charges for fraud, forgery, harassment, and impersonating a government official. The investigation that followed was thorough and devastating for Karen. Detective James Park from the White Collar Crime Division took particular interest in the case. Turns out, I wasn't her first victim. The investigators found a pattern of forged documents, fake citations, and harassment spanning 5 years. 3 families had moved because of her tactics, and 2 others had paid thousands in bogus fines just to avoid confrontation. They discovered she had a whole filing system in her home office, meticulously organized folders for each neighbor with manufactured violations dating back years. She had graphs tracking compliance rates and a point system she'd invented to rank residents. I was apparently a level 5 violator, whatever that meant. The detective said in 30 years of law enforcement, he'd never seen someone document their own crimes so thoroughly. Karen's face at the first court hearing was priceless. She walked in wearing her best power suit, a navy ensemble that screamed, "I demand to speak to the manager." She clearly expected to intimidate me into dropping the charges. Then she saw Sarah, recognized her from news articles about high-profile real estate cases, and her confident facade cracked like cheap paint. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Her lawyer, a nervous man named Gerald Fletcher who looked like he regretted taking the case, tried to argue that this was all a misunderstanding. He claimed Karen was simply an enthusiastic volunteer trying to maintain property values. Judge Catherine Williams, a no-nonsense woman with steel-gray hair, was having none of it. She'd reviewed the evidence, and her expression said it all. The evidence was overwhelming. Not only had she forged the eviction notice, but investigators found templates on her computer for fake legal documents. She'd been running a one-woman reign of terror, using her HOA position to bully anyone she deemed unworthy of the neighborhood. They even found a draft of a fake lien she was planning to file against another neighbor who'd planted roses she didn't approve of. Sarah presented our case with surgical precision. She showed how Karen had systematically abused her position, violated federal law with the forged seal, and caused quantifiable emotional and financial damage to multiple families. The judge's expression grew sterner with each piece of evidence. At one point, she removed her glasses and stared at Karen with such intensity that Karen actually took a step backward. Under pressure from the judge and facing potential criminal charges that could result in serious prison time, Karen's lawyer advised her to settle. But I wasn't interested in a simple payout. I wanted something that would ensure she never terrorized another neighbor again. Money would just be a slap on the wrist for someone who drove a luxury SUV and had her house professionally decorated every season. The settlement negotiations were intense. Sarah was brilliant, leveraging every piece of evidence to maximum effect. She brought up the elderly Mrs. Henderson, showing medical records that linked her stress-related health issues directly to Karen's harassment. She presented testimony from the Johnsons about how they'd lost $30,000 selling their house below market value just to escape. The Patels had documented over 200 harassment incidents in 8 months. In the end, to avoid prison time and pay for damages and legal fees, Karen had to agree to something unprecedented. She would sign over a 10% stake in her own property to me. Her lawyer tried to negotiate it down to 5%, but Sarah stood firm. The woman who tried to steal my home would now be paying me for the privilege of living in hers. The irony was delicious. The woman who tried to evict me from my home now owed me rent on hers. Every month, she had to write a check to the man she tried to destroy. The legal documents were airtight, making me a partial owner with rental rights to her property value. The monthly amount was calculated based on fair market rental rates for the area, coming to $1,800. The court also dissolved her HOA presidency immediately and barred her from holding any leadership position in any homeowners association for life. The judge's words still echo in my mind. She called her actions a gross abuse of power and said with a stern voice that she had violated the trust of an entire community. She added that people like Karen were the reason HOA associations had such terrible reputations. But the best part was when the judge ordered Karen to personally apologize to every resident she'd harassed. She had to go door to door, with a court-appointed supervisor, and deliver written apologies. Watching her ring my doorbell and hand me that letter with shaking hands while the supervisor took notes was a moment I'll treasure forever. The day the news spread through Maple Grove Estates was like watching dominoes fall. Neighbors who had suffered in silence for years suddenly felt free to share their stories. Tom Garcia revealed she'd tried to fine him for having a Mexican flag sticker on his car during Hispanic Heritage Month. The Williams family shared how she'd measured their children's chalk drawings on the sidewalk and declared them too colorful. Everyone had a Karen story, and they were finally free to tell them. Karen tried to maintain her dignity, but it was impossible. Every time she went to get her mail, neighbors would whisper. Every time she wrote that monthly check to me, she had to confront her failure. The enforcer had become the enforced. She started leaving her house only at odd hours, doing her grocery shopping at 6 a.m. to avoid running into anyone. I used every penny of her rent payments to establish the Maple Grove Legal Aid Fund, designed to help residents fight HOA abuse. The founding documents, which are public record, list the initial funding source as contributions from K. Blackwood. She has to live with the knowledge that her own payments protect others from people like her. We've already helped 2 families in neighboring communities fight back against their own HOA bullies. The new HOA board, elected in a special meeting, immediately reversed all of Karen's bizarre rules. Suddenly, curtains could be any shade of beige we wanted. Doorbell volume was no longer regulated. And garbage bins could be brought in at our leisure. It was like the neighborhood could finally breathe again. Children played freely on the sidewalks, and neighbors actually started talking to each other without fear of citations. The final court order came down 6 months after that fake eviction notice appeared on my door. In addition to the property stake, Karen faced $200,000 in total fines and narrowly avoided 18 months in prison. When the judge read the final amount, she stood there with her mouth open, her face turning the color of ash, swaying slightly as the reality of her situation hit her.